Have you ever found yourself excited about a new project, and it doesn't even have to be an SVG project, only to find that days or weeks later, that initial spark has faded, leaving behind a half-completed creation? You're not alone. In this episode, we dive deep into this all-too-common phenomenon with the help of Robert Jackman, a seasoned psychotherapist with a wealth of knowledge in understanding the human psyche. Robert shares insights into the subtle, often overlooked factors that contribute to our tendency to leave projects incomplete. From the whispers of self-doubt to the chains of negative self-talk, we explore how even the smallest experiences from our past or present can install a persistent voice inside our heads, convincing us we're not good enough. But why does this matter, especially in the realm of DIY crafting? Because, as Robert eloquently puts it, crafting is not just about creating something with our hands. It's a mirror reflecting our deepest fears, hopes, and battles we fight within. This conversation is not just about understanding why we might abandon a papercraft project. It's about uncovering the layers of our psyche that affect every aspect of our lives. As we peel back these layers with Robert, a surprising truth emerges, shedding light on the intricate dance between our creative endeavors and our inner selves. And just when you think you've grasped the full picture, Robert reveals perspectives that might just change the way you view every project you've ever left unfinished. Welcome to the Dreaming Tree Podcast. Very excited today to bring on my friend and guest, Robert Jackman, who's a best-selling author, inner child expert, and a board-certified psychotherapist with the National Board of Certified Counselors. And he's helped many people on their healing path in his private practice for over 20 years. His books are therapist recommended and now translated into 11 languages. Robert, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
So, the reason that I wanted to have you on was because I received an email from a customer recently, and she actually suggested a topic for a podcast. She, like many of us, wanted to know why we start something and never finish it. So can you kind of explain why many of us have a habit of starting projects or tasks with enthusiasm only to leave them unfinished?
That's a great question, and I'm going to answer the question first, but
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to come back and give some more background.
Okay.
So, a lot of us, I think many of us have been there where we've started something and we've just let it sort of die on the vine, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and just haven't really followed up with it. And I think there are a number of reasons why we do this. I think it can be related to a inner self-critical voice. This idea of perfectionism, this idea of limiting beliefs, like, oh, I can't really do this. So we do a lot of self-sabotaging at times. And I think that the origin story of that, from where I come from in psychology, is inner child wounding. And that's where a lot of times, in childhood, we experience things in our family of origin where it's like, okay, I'm not feeling very emotionally safe. And so I have to really put my playfulness, my sense of freedom aside, and really pay attention to what's going on in the family dynamic. And I think that's one of the reasons why we begin to learn these ideas of, okay, I can't really let myself have this creative freedom and just finishing something and seeing something to completion. So those are some ideas that I have as far as why we do this. And I think we've all been there at some point. It's that inner child trauma wounding that shuts down this creative expression. And so the symptoms of it are the being self-critical, the perfectionism, limiting beliefs, non-completion of projects, that sort of thing.
So even the smallest thing to a child can be such a huge thing to a child. And what you're saying is we really carry that with us into our formative years. And I mean, I just had a son, right? He's what,
Yeah,
16 months, and every time I talk about him, my face lights up. And
yeah.
I'm just thinking about my childhood, and I want to give him a stable home where, he sees nothing but love and compassion. But even with that, let's say you have the perfect upbringing. Is there still something that you can bring with you into your, adult life that would inhibit you or prevent you from just having that full confidence?
Well, it does happen. I mean, even with kids and then adults who've had really great childhoods. I mean, I've worked with people in the past, and I'll talk about inner child wounding, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I had a great childhood. I wasn't traumatized. I didn't have any abuse." But then we talk some more, and then I hear I'm thinking of one woman in particular, and she started talking about how she didn't really have a lot of confidence in herself.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, where does that come from?
Yeah.
And long story short, it came from she was not selected to be on the cheerleading squad.
Wow.
Right? And then that became this idea that she wasn't good enough.
So that's all it takes,
And
just one
but
little thing. Sorry.
yeah, and so she didn't have in her mind that was just, well, that's just how I am sort of thing. But I always look at, okay, where does this come from? Because it's coming from this is cause and effect.
Hmm.
It's coming from somewhere, so it's really examining that and looking at, okay, so this is an idea I have of myself. Did someone tell me about this, idea of self, or did I infer it from a situation?
Right. So I guess what you're saying is no matter how pristine your childhood is or was, it could be the smallest thing that kind of takes you down that rabbit hole. Um, so I guess my question is then, well, there has to be something that you can do to overcome that negative self-talk. Do you have any suggestions or ideas?
Well, Well, we can go back to my example of the gal who wasn't picked for the cheerleading squad. The best thing she could have done at that time was talk to either friends or an adult to put it into a context and say, this isn't about you. You're not bad.
Hmm.
It's just you didn't have some ability that they were looking for. And so let's say helping her to put that into a context so she could understand, oh, okay, so they just didn't like how I did this or that. It wasn't about me. I'm not bad. And so the best thing that we can do is really talk about it and gain perspective on it, because that's what's really missing in so many of these examples is a lack of perspective.
Right. So you're quick to just be like, oh well, it must be me. It must be I'm not good enough.
Right.
But then you fail to realize that there's a lot of different variables that come into play. Maybe it was, maybe she was coming in as a freshman and trying to try
Right.
out for the varsity squad, and there were people that had 3 more years of experience or 2 more years, right? Stuff like that.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And so it really helps. So I know you want to create this perfect environment for your child, which I know that you will do everything in your power to do that, to
Right.
create that, which is
Yes.
which is a beautiful expression of your love.
Right.
But there are going to be things that your child is going to encounter that you're not going to know about, but the more you can discuss and put things into perspective, that's going to help create this balance.
Okay, so let's take this whole idea and sort of lay it over into creative endeavors.
Right.
Back to the question. So I'm starting a project, super excited to create something. And just to give you a little background, as far as what we do, uh, before you can actually take the products from our site and cut them out and put them together, there's some decisions that you have to make. You have to pick colors, pick patterns, make sure that everything's cohesive. I think
Yeah.
that is probably where people struggle. And we guide them, and we always tell them, just, do your best, because over time, through experience and trial and error, you'll eventually figure it out. We're not all masters in, the art world. We're going to fail. But why do you suppose, why do people sometimes just hit a wall and not take that next step or try again? They just throw it away. Like, what's going on
Right.
psychologically that causes that? Does it go back to the I'm not good enough?
Well, that could be part of it, but I first want to say that you have amazing products and you really create a wonderful platform for people to have this wonderful creative expression.
Hmm.
But it's these self-limiting beliefs that we put into these situations. And so I came up with a tagline
Okay.
that I thought for you, that it's not about perfection, it's about expression.
Okay.
So it's about really just giving ourselves permission to go into a project, even though it might be overwhelming. Like personally, I know a number of people who have these amazing craft rooms
Hmm.
that look like a showroom,
Right.
right? They've bought every supply, every tool, all of that, but it's all there, but they're not doing anything with it.
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of times they become really overwhelmed because it's the idea, okay, if I start something, then it's not going to be perfect. And then somehow that's going to be a reflection on me that I'm bad. So I think that that's kind of the full circle sometimes. So that's why I think a lot of people just stop
Hmm.
and don't do anything, because if I start it and I do something and it turns out bad or not like what Leo would do, then I'm somehow not good, and so I don't want to see that. And that really is unfortunate. So I encourage people to just start something just for you. You're the only one that's going to see it, and
Right.
just have fun with it and give yourself that permission. So I know for me growing up, uh, I came from a loving family, but my mom and dad would argue a lot. And somehow I thought that was my fault.
Hmm.
And I became very shut down emotionally and very focused on them. And so I put aside my playfulness because I was very hyper focused on what was going on in the family dynamic. And so I really, like, I don't want to say forgot how to play,
Hmm.
but I wasn't focused on play. I was focused on what do I have to do to keep everything going okay here in the
You're in
family.
survival mode, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
So as an adult, I had to learn how to play. And that can also be reflective of what we're talking about.
Hmm.
So, like last winter, I got a paint by numbers kit, and I just did that, and that was a great meditation for me.
Right.
I gave myself that permission to do that, and I've written books, but it took me a long time to get ready to write the book, meaning I had these self-limiting beliefs. Like, who am I to write this book? Who am I? Other people smarter than me have written books. And I thankfully, through perspective and through my own therapy, I understood it's like, yeah, other people have written books on the inner child, but none of them have written them in my voice. And so that's what I would encourage your viewers to think about. It's like, I'm looking at all the crafts in your office there, how beautiful they are,
Mm.
but maybe someone can do their own expression of a craft and say, well, this is Leo did it this way, but I'm going to do it this way. And this is how I want to put my spin on it, my sort of flavor on it.
Your interpretation. And I love seeing that, especially when we have a group on Facebook. There's about 50,000 members in there. And occasionally someone new will come in and hey, this is my first post. And they show off a project and they put a little spin on something that I thought was
Right.
genius. I was like, wow, okay, I didn't even think of that. And they just love that.
Right.
I can tell. I mean, it's hard to tell through a computer screen that they're glowing, but you can feel it. Um, but
Exactly. And right. I mean, that's what's just so wonderful about our creative expression. And I look at this today in reference to like my book example. So I'm so thankful that I kind of got over myself and just went ahead and wrote the book and found an editor and self-published and got it up on Amazon. And now I have 70,000 readers worldwide and it's in 11 languages. I
that's
mean, and
awesome.
just right, isn't that amazing?
I've seen you come a long way. So congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
No, and I can
I
tell,
appreciate
and
that.
I can feel I can sense, the feeling of accomplishment and happiness that you have because even though, and I think I have the same feeling too. Every day I walk in here, and I just think to myself, why am I in this position? Why do people, think so highly of me? Why am I so fortunate when I doubt myself too? I don't think people realize that. Maybe it's just because I have this on-camera persona where I convey confidence. But you guys, you believe me, I worry about everything and I doubt myself constantly. But like you said, I want to put my own voice on things or my own spin on things, my interpretation of things. And for me, what it's really been is just making sure that I take that first step and just start.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you guys again. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into the studio, started something, and scrapped it. It happens, right?
It
Like,
happens, and I think that's what people don't see. Most people see the finished product,
right.
but what people don't see is sort of the messiness of that goes into that finished product. And
Yes.
and so it's I think people in creative expression, I think that people have confidence in creative expression because of the mistakes, because of messing up. Things aren't perfect, and they try again. So it's giving ourselves permission to mess up. It's giving ourselves permission to try again and just stay with it.
Hmm.
And so there were examples of when I was in my creative expression writing my book that I would send stuff to my editor and she's like, you need to reword this. This doesn't make sense, sort of thing. And
Right.
I would work at it again and try again. So it wasn't like I took it as criticism. I took it as what is going to be my best expression.
Yep.
And so that's what I kept on going back into. And so with paper crafts, it's about what's going to be the best expression for this work that I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Um, Real quick question. You mentioned that, you know, for example, with you, your readers, they see the end result, and you've gone through draft and draft and edit and edit. Same with
Right.
me. They see this hyper polished video that displays and showcases the final product, but they don't realize how often I'm sitting there like a surgeon with a little piece of paper and some glue, like just perfecting things. You'll never reach perfection, but it's okay to be messy, and that's part of the process, right? We're not perfect.
It's not about perfection. It really isn't. And I think that so many of us, I've been this used to be me of I painted, I did watercolors, oils, I did flower arranging, I did neurographic art. I've had all these kinds of expressions of art in my life. But I know that in the past I would create something and people were like, oh, this is really beautiful. I'm like, well, yeah, but see, there's a little mark here.
Right.
And I would start to apologize for the flaws. And so it took me a while to just say, I'm not going to do that. They're seeing the beauty in it.
Yeah.
Why do I need to destroy or color their impression of this? They're
Yeah,
enjoying it.
they are.
So
And
let it be.
now that you mention that, I'm glad you brought that up because a very common thing that happens when one of our dreamers posts a project is, they'll immediately focus on the flaw. It'd be like, oh,
Yep.
well, it's not perfect, and I messed up this, and then me as the viewer seeing it for the first time, I don't see that. I see it. I'm like, wow, you did a wonderful job. I do the same thing though, and the problem is, I think, is that we as the creators, we as the ones that are interpreting whatever project it is that we're working on, we're so hyper focused on it and just staring at it for so long that
Yep.
we recognize the flaws. Where, I mean, look at a flower when you're walking down a path. It's beautiful. If you get up
Right.
close and start
Right.
nitpicking, oh, it's missing a petal, or oh, that petal's ripped. But you don't see that because you're not the one making it. So I'm guilty of it too,
So,
guys.
so
I do it
really,
all the time.
so really, and a great example of that is if you're getting dressed in the morning and looking in the mirror and you start nitpicking and taking apart yourself, like, oh, look at this, and this is, I don't like this, and look at this is a new wrinkle. Where did that come from? And all that sort of stuff. That's really what you're gonna probably do with your creative work. And so it's about being gentle with yourself
Hmm.
and saying, this is me today. Because other people aren't doing that sort of nitpicking and tearing us down. They're like, "Oh, it's great to see you, Leo." They're
Right.
not they're not looking at things you might be saying about
They have their
yourself.
own things
And it's
going
the
on.
same. Yeah, people are lost in their own stuff.
Right.
They're just happy to see you, or they're just happy to see the piece of artwork you created.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wow, that's amazing. This is
Yeah.
really beautiful." So it's remembering that our artwork is an extension and expression of ourselves, and it's a really beautiful expression of ourselves. It's giving ourselves permission to play and be creative and to be joyful and to bring and seeing that finished product and saying, wow, this is really beautiful. And it's like you gave me a piece of your paper craft
I did.
years ago, and I still have it, and I'm like, this is really beautiful.
Was it?
So every time what's
No, go
that?
ahead. Every time you.
Every time I look at it, I think of you, and I see kind of more details in
Oh,
that piece and that I didn't see before. And I use it like as a little centerpiece sometimes. And it's great, you
was it
know?
the was it the
So
little was it the little light up chrysanthemum?
yeah,
It was. Okay.
yeah,
That's cool. I'm glad you still have it.
yeah, it's really cool.
That's cool.
I do. It's
No,
it's it's very cool.
I think you've pretty much touched on every, personal fear or issue that we have with ourselves when it comes to just allowing full self-expression. So I appreciate talking to you. I do want to change topics just a little bit because after
Yeah.
reconnecting with you after a while, you had released a book called The Tender Path of Grief and Loss. That's your most recent one?
That's right.
Okay.
Hmm.
So for whatever reason, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but and I can't explain why. I just kind of see this as me being a vessel to help people, but oftentimes I'll actually develop. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost as if there's members of the Dreaming Tree community that reach out to me and kind of confide in me when it comes to a loss that they've had. They find some
Hmm.
sort of comfort in talking to me, and I love it because, as I mentioned in an email that I sent to one of my customers recently, um, I, I like getting out of my shoes for a minute and stepping into their shoes. I've had customers that have lost their children, and their husbands, especially because my demographic is a little bit, what are they, boomers, like the boomer generation, right? Um, so I actually enjoy it, and if I could be of service and just kind of lend an ear and talk to them, um, I'm more than happy to do that. But I guess I'm wondering, what is it about art and self-expression that leads people that are going through that into the craft room? Like, what's the connection? Or is it just because, I mean,
Well,
everyone experiences it? It just, It's not a coincidence just because everyone experiences it and they just so happen to be a customer. I don't know.
Well, I believe people that have done artwork and crafting throughout their lifetime find great solace in that expression because it's something that is very comes very naturally, and it's an escape from all of this heaviness, these heavy feelings, and it's there's a joy that comes from doing that creative expression. And so I will, when I'm working with people who are going through grieving, I'll ask what sort of artwork or if they have a creative expression,
Oh.
and I'll really encourage them to do that because it's a great way to relieve that stress. Because especially when they're first going through a loss, it's really taking the time, setting aside the time to play, to handle, let's say, paper crafts, or to do knitting or painting, or something that just takes you out of that like overthinking and into a place where you can just let go and feel safe
Hmm.
and feel comforted by. And so it could be where maybe they go in their craft room and they're just handling the supplies. They're looking at paper or they're looking at projects they've done, because that's a great comfort, because something that's evergreen, something they've had throughout most of their lifetime probably. And so it's a great way to just relieve some of that stress.
So one of the first words that you used to describe the act of getting involved in something creative while you're going through that process was escape, and that is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because to me, when you try to escape something, it's almost like you're not allowing it to run its course. But that's not the case, right? That's just you're.
Well, the reality with losses, it could be a death, it could be a job loss, it could be something else. The reality is you're going to come back to it, right? It's going to be staring you right in the
It
face.
will run its
So
course.
it will run its course. So you're not going to be able to escape it forever, sort of thing.
Okay.
So there's healthy breaks that we need to have. Like I'll have, if someone's going through a really tough time, I'll say, I just need you to go out and stare at the clouds. I
Hmm.
need you to go look at water. I need you to go and do a craft. I need you to do something that's not going to take a lot of brain power, because your brain is overloaded with the loss, job loss, marriage, divorce, whatever you're going through. You need a break from that. You need an escape from that for just a little bit to help restore you. So it's very artwork and creative expression is very restorative.
Wonderful. Good. Do you have anything else to add as far as dealing with grief? Um, it doesn't even have to be related to crafts, because I know initially when I started this podcast, I said, well, I want to try to make sure that as much of the conversation overlaps into the creative aspect of what we do. But the more I've been thinking about it, the more I realize that everything that we go through in life has an impact on that creative part of our brain. So I'm okay with pretty much discussing anything. And I know for a fact that many of my listeners will appreciate anything else that you can add as far as, grief goes. So have at it, and also take a
Well,
minute to plug the name of that book, please.
well, the book is called The Tender Path of Grief and Loss. And in the book, I talk about folks who have gone through lots of different types of losses. So job loss, being given a chronic illness diagnosis, loss of a child, death of a child, death of a spouse, someone who went through a fire. And so, but each of those stories has a message of hope and redemption. They have a message of you can get through this. But one of the common things, and what I positioned in the book, was this idea of losses that are not named or identified. And I believe that it could be a small loss, it could be a big one, but a lot of us just push those down into what I call the loss bucket. And so the loss bucket gets filled up with, okay, yeah, this happened, but I just have to keep on moving on. I have a business to run, I have a family to raise, and I don't have time for that. And so we keep on loading the stuff up in the loss bucket. And that's what contributes a lot of times to feelings of depression and anxiety because we're not acknowledging it, we're not naming it. And so I encourage people, one of a really basic thing is to begin to write out, I call them symbolic letters, where they're writing out, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm really sad or I'm really overwhelmed. And just giving ourselves that permission to then name it. Because when we express it, either verbally or through writing, then we can really work with it. Then we can really begin to go on a healing path. When it's inside of us in that lost bucket in the shadows, it has a lot of power over us. And it can really contribute to this idea of self, of shutting us down, of limiting us and telling ourselves, I cannot, I need to feel bad about this. And I don't have any other option. When really there are many other options to take. So it's knowing that there are ways that we can work through our pain, that there are so many creative expressions, there are so many ways of talking through things, of being with other people, um, dancing, painting, writing, um, exercising, that it's about, think about it this way, it's about movement. It's moving that energy so that it's not stuck within us. Because when it's stuck, that's what festers, and that's what keeps us just spinning in our pain. And that's not fair to any of us.
Well, that can manifest into physical things too.
Very much.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's anytime there's stuck energy, that's going to manifest into physical pain, chronic illness, emotional pain, depression, anxiety, whatever it might be.
So let's get it out. Let's
Yeah,
get it all
let's get
out.
it out. Let's move that. And through our artwork, that is movement
Yeah.
because it's that a creative expression and you're thinking about the piece that you're working on. You're like, oh, I'm going to do this, or I want to add this piece. And that's a great way to relieve that stress that we carry.
Yeah. And it's also, I feel like there's like a butterfly effect to it where when you begin an endeavor or any process, you have no idea what doors you may encounter and who you might touch or who you might influence or impact by just taking that first step. But Mr. Jackman, Robert
Exactly.
Jackman, you have been a good friend. You have helped me through one of my toughest times in my life. So I thank you for being with me today. I love you. And I hope,
Thank
and I
you.
know for a fact that my customers will too. And I hope to have you back on because I know they're going to be emailing me and be like, hey, ask him this, ask him this. So if you would, I'd love to
I
have you back on.
I would really enjoy that, Leo. Thank you so much for this time that you've spent with me today to allow me to talk about something that I'm passionate about. And I'd love to come back anytime to talk about all these topics because I have my inner child book, I have a relationship book, and then I have my grief and loss book that are all up on Amazon. So I have lots to talk about.
I know you do. We'll have you back on. Absolutely. As we draw this episode to a close, I want to leave you with a thought, a beacon of light to guide you through the fog of negative self talk that all too often clouds our journey. Today, with the help of Robert Jackman, we've delved into the shadows of our unfinished projects, uncovering the whispers of doubt and the echoes of "you're not good enough" that can halt our progress in its tracks. But it's in acknowledging these shadows that we find our way back to the light. It's crucial to remember that the veneer of perfection we often see in the world around us, and even in the polished presentations of Dreaming Tree projects, it's just that, a veneer. Behind every smooth surface are layers of trial, error, and yes, unfinished attempts. I, too, stand with you in this. My journey is full of projects begun in a rush of excitement, only to be left by the wayside. But here's what I've learned. Each abandoned project, each unfulfilled idea is not a testament to failure, but a stepping stone on the path to growth. Behind the scenes of every success story, including the ones we craft in our own lives, are countless moments of doubt, numerous instances where we could have said, I'm not good enough, and stopped. Yet here we are, continuing to strive, to dream, and to create. It's not the completion of every project that defines our worth, but the courage to keep putting one foot in front of the other, to keep trying, despite the setbacks. Let's transform the narrative, turning I'm not good enough into I'm on a journey of becoming. Each day, we have the opportunity to silence negative self-talk by affirming our worth, our strength, and our capability to grow beyond our past or present experiences. Remember, perfection is an illusion. Progress is where true beauty lies. As we move forward, I encourage you to embrace every start, every pause, and every unfinished project, not as evidence of inadequacy, but as proof of your bravery in the face of doubt. Let each attempt, complete or not, be a testament to your resilience and a step toward the version of yourself you aspire to be. Until next time, keep crafting your story, one day, one project, one step at a time. You are more than good enough. You are capable of extraordinary things. I look forward to crafting with you soon.